October 14th, 1944, Leyte Gulf, Philippines. Lieutenant Commander Akiko Tanaka pressed her field glasses against the observation deck window of the cruiser Shinryū, watching something that defied everything she knew about aerial warfare. Divine Wind pilots were falling from the sky, not to visible enemy fighters, not to flak bursts she could track, but to something that seemed to anticipate their every move. In the past 18 minutes, she had witnessed 12 of the Emperor's most devoted warriors spiral into the ocean, their aircraft torn apart by gunfire that appeared to come from nowhere. The American ships below continued their steady course, their guns tracking targets with an almost supernatural precision that made Tanaka's blood run cold. What Lieutenant Commander Tanaka didn't know, what the entire Japanese Naval Air Force wouldn't comprehend until too late, was that she was witnessing the first large-scale deployment of the AN/SPG-25 radar fire control system, an invisible technological revolution that would transform every kamikaze pilot into a predictable target rather than a divine weapon. The mathematics of aerial interception were being rewritten not by superior pilots or faster aircraft, but by electromagnetic waves that could see through clouds, darkness, and the very intentions of approaching attackers. The crisis had been building since the summer of 1944, though its roots stretched back to laboratories in Massachusetts and California, where brilliant women like Dr. Elena Vasquez at Bell Laboratories had been solving the fundamental problems of radar-guided gunnery. What began as theoretical calculations about tracking moving targets had evolved into the most sophisticated anti-aircraft system ever deployed. By October 1944, American destroyers and cruisers carried technology that could track, predict, and destroy incoming aircraft with mathematical precision that no human gunner could match. Among those who understood the true scope of this technological advantage was Commander Sarah Chen, a former MIT mathematics professor temporarily assigned to the Pacific Fleet's Bureau of Ordnance. Her calculations, presented to Admiral William Bull Halsey in September 1944, were staggering in their implications. Radar-guided guns achieved kill rates of 73% against diving aircraft, compared to 12% for manually operated anti-aircraft batteries. But the numbers told only part of the story. The psychological impact on surviving pilots who faced an enemy that seemed to predict their every maneuver would prove even more devastating. According to post-war interrogations recorded by Allied intelligence, the Japanese Naval Air Force possessed 2,847 trained kamikaze pilots and 1,200 aircraft specially modified for suicide attacks under the command of Admiral Takeshi Yamamoto, one of Japan's most experienced naval aviators. But they were equipped for the wrong war. Their tactics assumed American gunners would need time to spot, track, and manually aim at approaching aircraft. They had no understanding of electronic systems that could detect planes 40 miles away, calculate their speed and trajectory, and direct concentrated firepower to precise intercept points. The first real shock came on the morning of October 14th. According to Japanese flight records captured after the war, radar operators aboard the carrier Akagi watched in growing alarm as formation after formation of Divine Wind pilots approached American task forces, only to be systematically destroyed before reaching their targets. By noon, 47 aircraft had failed to return from what should have been successful suicide runs. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka's detailed observations, recorded in her personal journal and discovered by American forces in 1945, provide the most complete Japanese account of that terrible morning. The enemy guns move as if controlled by the gods themselves. They track our divine warriors through clouds where no human eye can see. They fire before our pilots have even begun their final dives. It is as if the Americans have learned to read the wind itself. The 2-week period following October 14th marked the beginning of Japan's aerial catastrophe. According to the proceedings of the Imperial Naval Staff, the destroyer Hayabusa, which had escorted successful kamikaze strikes since 1942, found its pilot returning to report mission failures that seemed impossible. American ships that should have been helpless against diving aircraft were destroying attackers with what pilots described as gunfire from the spirit world. The technological sophistication of American radar fire control systems stunned Japanese engineers who managed to examine wreckage from failed attacks. 6 different types of tracking mechanisms worked in concert: primary search radars that detected aircraft at extreme range, height-finding radars that determined altitude, tracking radars that followed individual targets, computer systems that calculated future position, and fire control radars that guided the actual guns. Some systems could track up to 12 targets simultaneously. Some predicted aircraft movements up to 30 seconds in advance. Some automatically adjusted for wind, target speed, and ammunition type. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, chief engineer for the Japanese Navy's Technical Research Institute, submitted a classified report on October 28, 1944, that captured the scope of their technological disadvantage. The enemy possesses electronic eyes that see farther than our scouts, electronic brains that calculate faster than our finest mathematicians, and electronic hands that guide their weapons with precision no human can achieve. We are fighting the future with tools from the past.
British. The radar systems themselves represented a convergence of American industrial and scientific capabilities that Japan simply couldn't match. At Bell Laboratories in New Jersey, Dr. Elena Vasquez led a team of 37 women mathematicians and engineers working on fire control algorithms. Their calculations, performed on room-sized mechanical computers, solved the complex differential equations needed to intercept fast-moving aircraft. At MIT's Radiation Laboratory, Dr. Margaret Harrison's research into microwave radar technology had produced the magnetotron tubes that powered the new tracking systems. The manufacturing requirements alone revealed the scope of American technological superiority. Each AN/SPG-25 fire control system required 847 vacuum tubes, 12,000 electronic components, and 23 different types of specialized radar equipment. The Chrysler Corporation's Chicago plant produced the computer mechanisms. General Electric's Schenectady facility manufactured the radar transmitters. Western Electric assembled the complete systems. By September 1944, American industry was producing 340 complete radar fire control systems monthly, more than Japan had produced during the entire war. Captain Yuki Sato, commanding officer of the experimental Kamikaze unit based at Matsuyama Air Base, submitted increasingly desperate reports throughout late October 1944. Her pilots, among Japan's most experienced naval aviators, described encounters that challenged their understanding of warfare itself. Lieutenant Kenji Watanabe reported seeing his wingman destroyed by accurate gunfire while still 3 miles from the target, Sato wrote. The American guns were firing at empty sky, yet when Watanabe's aircraft reached that exact position, it was destroyed instantly. It is as if they shoot at ghosts and kill the living. The psychological impact on Japanese aircrews became evident within days of encountering radar-guided defenses. Flight Surgeon Commander Rei Ishikawa documented what she termed divine wind syndrome among returning pilots. Symptoms included trembling hands, inability to sleep, and recurring nightmares about invisible enemies. More critically, experienced pilots began hesitating during their final approach runs, trying to evade gunfire they couldn't see until it was too late. October 20th, 1944, Leyte Gulf. According to mission reports filed with Imperial Naval Headquarters, 18 kamikaze aircraft under the command of squadron leader Emiko Fujiwara approached what appeared to be a lightly defended American convoy. The weather was perfect, clear skies, unlimited visibility, no enemy fighters in sight. Intelligence reports indicated the convoy consisted of transport vessels with minimal anti-aircraft capabilities. At 1,400 meters altitude and closing at 350 kilometers per hour, Fujiwara's formation should have been unstoppable. Manual gunners would need at least 60 seconds to spot, track, and coordinate fire against fast-moving targets. The Divine Wind pilots had trained extensively for precisely this scenario, multiple aircraft attacking simultaneously from different angles to overwhelm defensive fire. At 0847 hours, at 22 nautical miles, American radar operators detected the incoming formation, and AN/SPG-25 systems aboard 3 destroyers immediately began tracking individual aircraft, calculating speed, altitude, and probable attack vectors. Computer mechanisms, each weighing 1,200 pounds and containing thousands of mechanical calculators, began solving the intersection problems needed for successful interception. By 0851 hours, long before Japanese pilots could see their targets clearly, American fire control systems had distributed target assignments among available gun mounts. The USS Morrison's twin 5-inch 38 caliber guns received targeting data for aircraft approaching from the northeast. The USS Patterson's quad 40mm mounts were assigned targets coming from the east. The USS Fletcher's weapons were directed toward aircraft attacking from the south. At 0852 hours, when Fujiwara's formation was still 8,000 meters from their targets, American guns opened fire. The first shells exploded precisely where the computer systems calculated the aircraft would be 15 seconds later. To Japanese pilots, it appeared that American gunners were shooting at empty air. Then, as their aircraft flew through those predetermined coordinates, they found themselves in the center of devastating fragmentation patterns. Squadron leader Fujiwara's own aircraft disintegrated at 0853 hours, victim of a 5-inch shell that exploded exactly 47 meters ahead of her projected flight path. Her wingman, Lieutenant Sachiko Hayashi, attempted an evasive maneuver, but found herself flying directly into a second barrage that had been calculated to intercept her escape route. Within 90 seconds, 14 of the 18 attacking aircraft had been destroyed. The 4 survivors, their formations disrupted and their confidence shattered, attempted to withdraw, but were tracked and destroyed by radar-guided guns during their retreat. The American convoy continued its steady course, having suffered no casualties and minimal damage. The radar operators had performed their duties with mechanical precision, their electronic systems having predicted and countered every aspect of the Japanese attack. From the perspective of American crews, the engagement had almost been routine. Their instruments detected threats, their computers calculated solutions, and their weapons automatically engaged targets according to electronic instructions. For surviving Japanese observers aboard distant reconnaissance aircraft, the destruction of Fujiwara's elite squadron represented something far more terrifying than a tactical defeat. They had witnessed the complete negation of kamikaze tactics by technology they couldn't understand, countermeasures they couldn't duplicate, and defensive capabilities they couldn't overcome. The ripple effects of successful radar-guided interceptions spread rapidly through Japanese naval aviation units throughout the Philippine campaign. According to intelligence reports intercepted by Allied codebreakers, pilot training programs were modified to emphasize evasive maneuvers during approach runs. Aircraft were equipped with additional armor plating. Formation tactics were revised to include more complex attack patterns. None of these modifications addressed the fundamental problem. Radar-guided fire control systems didn't rely on visual detection or manual tracking. They detected aircraft regardless of evasive maneuvers, calculated intercept solutions faster than human pilots could change course, and directed weapons with precision that made armor and formation tactics irrelevant. Commander Akiko Tanaka, Chief of Staff for the 5th Air Fleet, submitted a classified assessment to Imperial Headquarters on November 2, 1944, that captured the growing desperation within Japanese aviation commands. Our divine wind warriors face an enemy that sees without eyes, thinks without minds, and shoots without hesitation. Each mission becomes not a sacred sacrifice for the Emperor, but merely another calculation in their mechanical brains. The technological gap extended beyond radar detection to the integration of multiple electronic systems working in perfect coordination. American fire control computers received input from search radars, tracking radars, weather stations, and ballistic calculators. They automatically adjusted for target speed, wind conditions, ammunition types, and gun wear patterns. They could engage multiple targets simultaneously while maintaining tracking on additional threats. Dr. Keiko Matsumoto, one of Japan's leading electronics engineers, was assigned in November 1944 to analyze captured American radar equipment from a damaged destroyer. Her report, classified as ultra-secret by Japanese intelligence, revealed the true scope of their technological disadvantage. The American fire control system contains more electronic components than exist in all of Japan's research laboratories combined, she concluded. Their radar mechanisms operate on frequencies we cannot generate, using vacuum tubes we cannot manufacture, guided by computational methods we do not understand. The human cost of radar-guided defenses became apparent in the declining effectiveness of kamikaze operations throughout late 1944. Squadron leader Miki Yamada's detailed mission reports from Seibu Air Base document the growing psychological pressure on her pilots. Lieutenant Commander Yuka Suzuki returned from 3 separate missions, her aircraft damaged but not destroyed, Yamada wrote. She reports that American gunfire follows her through clouds, around mountains, through evasive maneuvers she learned from our most experienced instructors. She says the enemy weapons fire at where she will be, not where she is. This predictive capability represented the most sophisticated application of electronic fire control ever deployed in naval warfare. The AN/SPG-25 systems used analog computers to solve complex differential equations in real time, calculating where a maneuvering aircraft would be based on its current speed, altitude, and direction. The system automatically adjusted these calculations based on observed changes in target behavior, creating fire patterns that anticipated evasive actions. The manufacturing scale required for widespread deployment of radar fire control systems demonstrated American industrial capabilities that Japan couldn't hope to match. The Westinghouse Corporation's Baltimore plant employed 4,700 workers producing radar components. The Sperry Corporation's Brooklyn facility manufactured the mechanical computers. The Radio Corporation of America's Camden operation built the electronic assemblies. Together, these facilities were producing more radar equipment monthly than Japan had ever manufactured. By November 1944, the psychological impact of facing radar-guided defenses had created what Japanese medical officers termed electronic warfare syndrome among kamikaze pilots. Flight surgeon Lieutenant Colonel Misaki Abe documented symptoms including disorientation, premature attack runs, and inability to maintain formation discipline when approaching American task forces. More critically, experienced squadron leaders began reporting that their most reliable pilots were becoming unpredictable during the final phases of suicide attacks. The traditional Japanese approach to kamikaze operations emphasized spiritual preparation, precise timing, and unwavering determination during the final dive.
Pilots trained extensively to maintain steady flight paths during their approach runs, knowing that evasive maneuvers would compromise accuracy and reduce the likelihood of successful ship strikes. This tactical doctrine, developed through months of training and combat experience, became a fatal vulnerability when facing radar-guided weapons. American fire control systems were specifically designed to exploit predictable target behavior. The more steadily a kamikaze pilot flew during his approach run, the more accurately the radar computers could calculate intercept solutions. Pilots who maintained disciplined formation flying were easier to track and engage than scattered individual aircraft. The spiritual dedication that made kamikaze attacks psychologically effective also made them electronically vulnerable to automated defensive systems.
British. The technological sophistication of integrated radar fire control represented a fundamental shift in naval warfare that Japanese commanders struggled to comprehend. Traditional anti-aircraft defense relied on human observers detecting threats, manual gunners tracking targets, and visual coordination between multiple weapon systems. The time delays inherent in human reaction made concentrated attacks by fast-moving aircraft nearly impossible to counter effectively. Radar-guided systems eliminated human reaction time from the defensive equation. Electronic detection occurred at the speed of light. Computer calculations were completed in milliseconds. Gun training and firing were automatically coordinated across multiple weapon systems. The result was defensive fire that appeared to anticipate kamikaze attacks rather than simply responding to them. Commander Noriko Takahashi, Air Operations Officer for the Combined Fleet, submitted her final assessment of radar-guided defensive capabilities on November 15, 1944. Her conclusions, based on analysis of 347 failed kamikaze missions, provided the most accurate Japanese evaluation of American technological superiority. The enemy has achieved perfect unity between electronic eyes, mechanical brains, and steel weapons, she wrote. Our pilots face not human gunners, but mechanical death that calculates their destruction with mathematical precision. We are no longer fighting a war, but being processed by a machine that turns our sacred warriors into statistical probabilities. The cascading effects of radar-guided interceptions extended beyond immediate tactical defeats to the fundamental viability of kamikaze operations as a strategic weapon. Each failed attack not only wasted aircraft and trained pilots, but also provided American radar operators with additional data about Japanese tactical approaches. The electronic systems literally learned from each encounter, improving their predictive algorithms and target engagement protocols. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, chief mathematician for the Bell Laboratories Fire Control Project, later described the adaptive capabilities built into the AN/SPG-25 systems. Our computers tracked not just individual aircraft, but patterns of attack behavior, she explained in post-war interviews. The more kamikaze missions we engaged, the better our systems became at predicting Japanese tactics and optimizing intercept solutions. This learning capability created a technological death spiral for Japanese aviation. As radar systems became more effective at destroying kamikaze attacks, Japanese commanders modified their tactics, which provided the American systems with new data patterns to analyze and counter. Each tactical innovation was electronically recorded, mathematically analyzed, and systematically defeated by automated defensive responses. The human element within American radar operations centers represented a perfect fusion of technological capability and trained expertise. Radar operators like Petty Officer First Class Dorothy Chen aboard the destroyer USS Callahan combined technical knowledge with combat experience to maximize system effectiveness. Her detailed engagement logs from November 1944 provide insight into how human operators enhanced electronic capabilities. The radar shows us where they are and where they're going. Our job is to understand what they're trying to do and make sure our guns are ready when they get there. It's like playing chess with machines that never get tired, never make mistakes, and always remember everything that happened before. The integration of human judgment with electronic precision created defensive capabilities that exceeded the sum of their individual components. Experienced radar operators could recognize kamikaze formation patterns, predict likely attack vectors, and pre-position defensive fire based on tactical analysis that complemented the mathematical precision of automated fire control systems. As October turned to November 1944, the accumulated evidence of radar-guided defensive success began filtering through Japanese command structures. Squadron leaders reported equipment failures that seemed suspiciously systematic. Intelligence officers noted coincidental patterns in American defensive fire. Technical analysts examined aircraft wreckage that showed damage inconsistent with manual gunnery. Yet the full scope of American radar fire control capabilities remained hidden behind technological complexity that Japanese engineers couldn't decipher. Captured equipment provided tantalizing clues about electronic components and mechanical assemblies, but understanding the integrated system required knowledge of mathematics, electronics, and computational theory that simply didn't exist within Japanese military research establishments. The invisible shield of radar-guided guns had been deployed, tested, and proven devastatingly effective against the emperor's most devoted warriors. What Japanese commanders didn't yet realize was that their technological disadvantage would only worsen as American industry continued producing increasingly sophisticated electronic warfare systems. But this was only the beginning. The true scope of radar-guided defensive capabilities and their systematic destruction of kamikaze effectiveness would become clear only in the months to come, when every Divine Wind squadron would face the terrible mathematics of electronic warfare.
By December 1944, what had begun as isolated failures of kamikaze missions had evolved into the systematic annihilation of Japan's most sacred military tradition. The invisible shield of radar-guided guns wasn't just defeating individual attacks, it was destroying the entire philosophical foundation of Divine Wind warfare. The cascading collapse. The ripple effects of radar-guided interceptions spread like poison through every aspect of Japanese naval aviation. According to captured medical records from the Yokosuka Naval Hospital, kamikaze pilot casualties from electronic warfare syndrome exceeded combat losses by January 1945. Flight surgeon Colonel Haruka Kimura documented cases of experienced pilots suffering complete nervous breakdowns before missions, their minds shattered by encounters with weapons that anticipated their every move. Squadron leader Asuka Mori's final report from Kanoya Air Base captured the psychological devastation. "My pilots speak of flying into mathematical death. They say the American guns fire at their souls, not their aircraft." Lieutenant Yumiko Sasaki returned yesterday claiming the enemy weapons were shooting at her thoughts. "I fear we are losing this war not to superior force, but to superior minds." The human cost transcended mere statistics. Captain Emiri Nakayama of the 203rd Special Attack Squadron submitted her resignation in January 1945, unable to continue sending pilots against defenses that's turned sacred sacrifice into mechanical slaughter. Her letter to Admiral Yamamoto, discovered in captured documents, revealed the moral crisis facing Japanese aviation. "I cannot ask these brave souls to die meaninglessly against machines that calculate their deaths before they even take off. This is not warfare, it is feeding our children to electronic demons." The mathematics of annihilation. The staggering efficiency of radar-guided defenses defied all pre-war projections about kamikaze effectiveness.
While traditional anti-aircraft guns achieved kill rates of 12% against diving aircraft, the AN/SPG-25 systems were destroying 73% of attacking planes before they could reach effective striking range. By February 1945, American radar operators were engaging kamikaze formations with the precision of target practice. Chief Petty Officer Margaret O'Sullivan aboard the cruiser USS Helena kept detailed engagement logs that revealed the systematic nature of the slaughter. February 14th, 17 contacts at 22 miles, all destroyed by 0847 hours. February 16th, 23 aircraft detected, engagement complete in 4 minutes. February 19th, 31 attackers, systems automatically distributed targets, 0 penetration of defensive perimeter. The technological superiority was overwhelming. Each radar fire control system cost $340,000 to manufacture, more than Japan spent on electronics research during the entire war. American industry was producing 340 complete systems monthly, while Japan struggled to manufacture replacement vacuum tubes for their basic radio equipment.
Japanese intelligence never discovered was the scope of American radar coordination networks. Individual ships didn't operate independent defensive systems. They formed integrated electronic webs that shared targeting data across entire task forces. When Lieutenant Ray Suzuki's squadron attacked the Kurama Islands anchorage in April 1945, they faced not individual ship defenses, but a coordinated electronic battlefield controlled by the command ship USS El Dorado. Master Chief Radar Operator Dorothy Williams described the network effect. We could see every Japanese aircraft within 60 miles. Our computers talked to each other, sharing targets and coordinating fire. When they tried to scatter and attack from multiple directions, our systems just divided them up mathematically and destroyed them piece by piece. The radar network extended beyond ships to include land-based installations, creating defensive umbrellas that made kamikaze attacks suicidal in the literal sense. Certain death with no possibility of success. American radar stations on captured islands provided early warning that gave defensive systems 10 to 15 minutes to prepare for incoming attacks. The staggering final numbers. The mathematical destruction of kamikaze warfare reached its climax during the Okinawa campaign. Between April and June 1945, Japanese forces launched 1,465 kamikaze sorties against American naval forces protected by radar-guided guns. Electronic defensive systems destroyed 1,388 aircraft, a kill rate of 94.7%. Of the 77 aircraft that penetrated the radar screen, secondary defenses eliminated 61 more. Only 16 kamikaze aircraft successfully struck their targets during 3 months of intensive operations. These achieved minimal damage against ships whose damage control systems had been specifically designed to counter kamikaze attacks. The mathematical ratio was devastating. 1,465 aircraft and pilots lost for negligible strategic impact. Captain Noriko Sato's final intelligence summary submitted to Imperial Headquarters on June 15, 1945, provided the most accurate assessment of radar-guided defensive capabilities. The enemy has achieved perfect fusion of electronic detection, mechanical calculation, and automatic fire control. They destroy our aircraft not through superior courage or skill, but through mathematical certainty. We cannot fight mathematics with spirit. The technological legacy. Post-war analysis revealed that American radar fire control systems had evolved during combat, becoming more effective through electronic learning algorithms that analyzed Japanese attack patterns. Dr. Elena Vasquez's final report showed that the system's kill rates improved from 67% in October 1944 to 94.7% by June 1945.
The psychological impact extended beyond military aviation to Japanese civilian morale. Families knew their sons were flying to certain death against weapons they couldn't understand or defeat. The sacred concept of kamikaze, divine wind, had been reduced to statistical probability by electronic systems that calculated destruction with mechanical precision. The final admission. Emperor Hirohito's surrender speech made no direct mention of radar-guided defenses, but his reference to new and most cruel bombs included the invisible weapons that had systematically destroyed Japan's last offensive capability. In private conversations recorded by palace staff, the emperor admitted, "Our divine warriors cannot defeat American mathematics." Admiral Takeshi Yamamoto's post-war testimony to Allied interrogators provided the most complete Japanese assessment of radar-guided defensive systems. "We trained our pilots to fight American gunners. Instead, they faced American computers. We prepared for human warfare and encountered electronic slaughter. The kamikaze failed not because our warriors lacked courage, but because courage cannot defeat mathematics." The hidden truth of World War II's Pacific theater wasn't just that Japan lost the war. It was that Japan lost to weapons they never fully understood. While the world focused on atomic bombs and massive carrier battles, the systematic electronic destruction of kamikaze attacks had already rendered Japan's last desperate strategy mathematically impossible. The 1,465 kamikaze pilots who died facing radar-guided guns in 1945 were not defeated by superior aircraft or braver enemies. They were calculated into death by electronic systems that turned spiritual warfare into mathematical certainty. The divine wind had met its match not in human courage, but in American engineering that could see the invisible, calculate the impossible, and deliver death with the precision of pure mathematics. In the end, Japan's most sacred military tradition was destroyed not by bombs that could be seen or enemies that could be fought, but by invisible electromagnetic waves that turned every kamikaze pilot into a predetermined target in electronic calculations they never knew existed. The radar-guided guns had won the war one mathematical equation at a time.